Welcome to the BEASTwriter podcast. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and today we're going to be discussing the undefeated 8-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. So let's get started. For those who don't know by now, I'm sure you heard that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not only the best team in the AFC North, their own division, the AFC, their own conference, but the entire NFL. It's not even a debate as to who the best of the best is. They are the cream of the crop as it currently stands, and people are wondering why. Well, the answer is simple. Big Ben Roethlisberger was the X factor. We all know that he had that season-ending injury to his arm last year, and that greatly hampered the team's success, which was a miracle that they came out and still fought deep into late in the season for a late playoff push, and ultimately didn't come to fruition. But it was backed up by a stout defense and a strong running game. And anytime you have Mason Rudolph behind center, you're not going to have or field much success. So it all comes down to the defense and how many points they can keep the other team off the board. And that's what you saw last year. That's what we're seeing this year. All right. So people are surprised at how well the Steelers are playing this year, but the roster is unchanged from last year. There is a lot of stuff that was going on the offense side of the football that the team really couldn't use in terms of being in the same kind of concept or scenario that the San Francisco 49ers find themselves in with Jimmy Garoppolo. Anytime you have a quarterback who is unable to make certain reads or progressions or unable to provide certain skill sets that your scheme requires, you're going to have to tailor back some of that game plan in order to fill that player's needs. And that's what you saw in Pittsburgh last year, and that's what you see with San Francisco 49ers under Jimmy Garoppolo. All right, so getting back to why the Steelers are 8-0. Big Ben, the X Factor. Best front 7D in the NFL. I said it last year, even with a healthy 49ers defensive line with DeForest Buckner, that the Steelers had the best front seven in the NFL before the season began. Yes, I truly believe that, and they did. The numbers don't lie. You take a look at the players that they have on that front seven. You have Cam Hayward, first team All-Pro. Okay, for those who don't know, Cam Hayward's probably the second best defensive tackle, defensive end, whether you want to talk about, 3-4 defensive ends, string him down to a defensive tackle, interior lineman, whatever the case may be, he's second behind Aaron Donald. And it's not even a question as to who 1B is, it's Cam Hayward. All right, Stephon Tuitt was playing at an all-pro level in my grading system. Again, if you don't know or don't follow my podcast, I do my grading system on a scale of 1 to 10 with 5 being average, and Stephon Tuitt was the best front seven player last year before his torn pec injury that ended his season. So this year, he's bouncing back, playing at an all-pro level once again, and you're seeing the results on that Steelers 8-0 record. All right, so Stephon Tuitt, Cam Hayward setting the edges on the defensive line, and then outside containment on the second levels, you have Bud Dupree, who is playing in a contract year once again after playing in a contract year last year, just like Eric Armstead was last year. Balled out of control. He was now franchise tagged, and he's balling again. Go figure. As for TJ Watt, I think we all know what we're getting with him. He's the best edge defender in the NFL, and he was snubbed for Defensive Player of the Year last year, playing at a Defensive Player of the Year pace this year. All right, so when you take those four players out of the seven and then you make the front seven, that's one hell of a front seven defensive line. Or excuse me, defensive front, if you ask me. Name a better defensive front than the Pittsburgh Steelers. You won't find one. And the roster, like I said, remains unchanged from last year. Yeah, they lost nose tackle Javon Hargrave, who went to Fly Eagles Fly. Good for him. But you know what the Steelers did? They didn't go out and draft Neville Gallimore like I told them to. No. What they did, who by the way hurt Big Ben, what a coincidence. But getting back to it, no, they didn't get Gallimore. What did they do? They roll in Tyson Alulu from defensive end to nose tackle. And he was playing at an all-pro level before his injury this year. So if people are wondering, wow, the Steelers are getting gas, you hear all these analysts, NFL analysts and insiders, oh wow, the Steelers aren't as good as they, as they seem to be because they're getting gassed in the running game by the Baltimore Ravens and now the Dallas Cowboys. Well, you know what the common denominator in all of this is? Tyson Alulu is also not playing. He's the heart of the defense in that 3-4 scheme. So You take Tyson Alulu out, of course the run defense is going to suffer. It's just common sense. Yeah, Isaiah Buggs, I love you. Alabama, go Bama, roll Tide. He's just not on the same level as Tyson Alulu. I'm just going to say, sorry, Isaiah Buggs. I love you, bro, but, roll Tide, like I said, but you're just not on that level as Tyson Alulu. You're just not. Tyson Alulu takes on double teams, even triple teams at times, freeing up the linebackers behind him. So that's why Tyson Alulu is such a key component to that 3-4 scheme, and that's why the defense has struggled in run defense as a result in the last 2 games, because he's been out. All right? Now, let's take into account, staying on the front 7, the inside linebacker position. For those who don't know, Devin Bush, second-year phenom, is out with a torn ACL. He suffered that injury, and in comes Robert Spillane with no drop-off or little drop-off in production. The only drop-off I see is a little bit in pass coverage, but Robert Spillane is making it up, and the turnover differential. He's finding the football, getting interception. We saw a pick 6 on Lamar Jackson against the Baltimore Ravens. We also saw him make plays on the ball, fumble recoveries, force fumbles, and making stops at or near the line of scrimmage. So what you get from Robert Spillane is a hard-nosed player who really knows his splits and how to play this scheme up to par and up to his level that the Pittsburgh Steelers required him to have. All right? So you take out Devin Bush, who's the quarterback of the defense. You roll in Robert Spillane, and you're still winning. That's called depth. Injuries happen in the NFL all the time. And going back to the San Francisco 49ers, a lot of people say, oh, man, the Niners have so many injuries. This season is lost. But, hey, no one cares. Yeah, it sucks. Do you expect them to go to the Super Bowl with all these injuries? No, it's a lot of injuries. But to say that the defense should be struggling this much, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. All right? Because there's teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers who lost Devin Bush, right? Javon Hargrave last year, right? He's not the plug anymore. But you have to roll in other players to get the job done, and no one's going to care. All right? So what happens, right? So the Steelers lost Mark Barron. Speaking of players they lost Mark Barron last year, right? He was a liability in pass coverage, so what did? They slide in Vince Williams, who I said last year during the season, I said, get Mark Barron out, put Vince Williams in. They did somewhat, but not really. This year you're seeing it, and Vince Williams leads the NFL in tackles for loss. Go figure. Yep, that's my forward thinking right there. Follow me on Twitter for not doing it. You're doing yourself a disservice. I'm just kidding. All right, so that's it for the defense side of the football. That's why the Steelers are winning. Defense wins championships. You win in the playoffs and make a deep playoff push with a strong running game and a stout defense. You solidify the offensive line and defensive line, win in the trenches. You'll win the ball game. Ball control, time of possession, turnover battle. It comes down to who can do those the best. And when it comes down to it, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right? So then you take on the offense side of the football. Well, what changed on the offense side of the football? It comes down to Chase Claypool, second-round pick who, again, I thought the team should have drafted Cam Akers out of Florida State or Neville Gallimore. I put it on Sports Illustrated for them that, those were their targets at number 49. He wasn't. It was Chase Claypool all along. Oh, what a whiff. But no one saw that coming. Nobody. And I mean nobody saw that one coming. I would argue that no one actually thought Chase Claypool would have the season he was having, or thought he was a steal coming in the second round. With a wide receiver draft class as deep as it was, do you think it was a steal to get Chase Claypool? Looking back, yes, obviously. But how about the time the pick was made? No one said that Chase Claypool was going to be the best thing since sliced bread. And he is. He is the X factor, just like Big Ben, at the wide receiver position. Juju Smith-Schuster is on the last year of his deal. I don't think he's going to return. You have Deontay Johnson, who is a second-team All-Pro as a punt returner and return man, and he is playing really well this year, but he gets oft injured. So the only consistent player outside of those two players and starter James Washington is Chase Claypool, and Chase Claypool is the long-term answer. These Steelers find these wide receivers later in the later rounds. You have Mike Wallace, you have Antonio Brown, the list goes, Emmanuel Sanders. The list goes on. And credit Kevin Colbert, who I believe is the best GM in all of football, to keep finding these wide receivers later in the draft. Kudos to the Steelers for getting it done. And yeah, as a result, they're winning. And when you have a stout front seven defense, and then you have one of the best offensive lines on offense, Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, Alejandro Villanueva. They drafted Kevin Dotson, who, in my opinion, is playing at an all-pro level before he was sidelined because David DeCastro came back from injury. He was a nice plug-and-play player. All-pro player. He was graded out as an all-pro in my grading system. Yes, he neutralized Fletcher Cox. Go believe that. Yup. Kevin Dotson neutralized Fletcher Cox, who many consider to be a top 5 defense tackle in the NFL. Not me, but a lot of people do. Household name. All right? So, with that being said, the Steelers are on the rise. I just named so many different players off the top of my head, with backed up by analysts and analytics as to why these players are so much better and why this team as a whole is so much better than the rest of the NFL. Now, we heard the news this morning. I woke up, got the notification, COVID-19 hit hard. Former 49er tight end Vance McDonald, now with the Pittsburgh Steelers, had COVID. Now they have to do this contact tracing, and now Big Ben is on the COVID list. Jalen Samuels, the running back, is on the COVID list. Vince Williams, who leads the NFL in tackles for loss, is on the COVID list. Yikes, this doesn't bode well for the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into the Week 10. Not good. But they always find a way to get it done. And if they don't, they still have a one-game lead over the Baltimore Ravens and their head-to-head 1-1 matchup. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on Thanksgiving, man. I can't wait till Thanksgiving. You know why? Because the Pittsburgh Steelers play the Baltimore Ravens in Pittsburgh. So I am anxious to see that matchup. Just like I was a few years ago when I was anxious to see the Thanksgiving Day when the Baltimore Ravens were playing at home against Jim Harbaugh's San Francisco 49ers. We all remember that hit that Patrick Willis put on Ricky Williams. Woof. I remember it like yesterday. Gosh, I miss Patrick Willis. Alright, well that's it. I am done. That's it for today. I hope you had what I'd like to offer. If you did, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right hand corner of your screen and turn on the bell notification so you get updates and notifications when I come on the show. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night. BEASTwriter out.